Hi, I'm your mathematics tutor Mindy from Apex Tutoring. In these videos, I'll be working through the 2019 HSC Mathematics Standard 2 exam. I'll be assisted by the Casio FX82AU Plus 2 calculator. If you want to learn more about using this calculator, or if you'd like some exam tips for the HSC, you can see some of my other videos with links in the description. I'll also put timestamps for the start of each question in case you want to jump ahead. So in this first video, I'll work through the multiple choice section, which is questions 1 through 15. Let's get started. Okay, question 1 says, which of the following shapes has a perimeter of 12 centimeters? So to find the perimeter of a shape, we just need to add up all of its sides. If we take a look at option A, we can see that opposite sides are equal given the markings. So the side on the left is 2, and with the same marking on the right, it's also 2. The bottom is 4 centimeters, and the top is also 4, since it has the same markings. So the perimeter would be 2 plus 2 plus 4 plus 4. And that's 12. We should double check that the units are what we want. These are in centimeters, and so we see that A is the answer. Now let's take a quick look at the other options. Just in case you didn't check A first, we would want to be able to work out their perimeters as well. So option B, the triangle, we just need to add up all 3 sides. It would be 4 plus 2 plus 3, which is 9. Option C has all of its 4 sides equal, so they're all 4 centimeters. So the perimeter is 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, which you may also use the shortcut 4 times 4, and that's 16. And the last option D is a trapezium. And we see with the markings that the left and right side are both 1. So the perimeter would be 4 plus 5 plus 1 plus 1. And that's 11. So that confirms that A is the answer. Okay, let's go to question 2. Question 2 says, sugar is sold in 4 different size packets. Which is the best buy? Well, to find the best buy, we have to compare like with like. Now, since the first option is already in 100 grams, we can compare them all per 100 grams. So option A is 40 cents per 100 grams. Now, option B is 500 grams for $1.65. There are 5 lots of 100 in 500. $1.65 divided by 5 from the 5 lots of 100. On the calculator, we can see that we get 33 cents. So that's 33 cents per 100 grams. Okay, option C is 1 kilogram for $3.50. Now, we're comparing grams, so we do need to convert this. We know that 1 kilogram is 1,000 grams, and 1,000 has 10 lots of 100. If you're not sure about how many lots of 100 a number like this has, you can check by taking 1,000 divided by 100, and we can see that there's 10 lots of 100 in 1,000. So we'll do the $3.50 divided by the 10 lots of 100. And we get 35 cents per 100 grams. Lastly, option D is 2 kilograms for $6.90. So 2 kilograms is 2,000 grams. And there are 20 lots of 100 in 2,000. So we'll do $6.90 divided by the 20 lots of 100. And we'll get 0.345. Now with money, we often round to 2 decimal places. But when we're comparing things like this, we might want to keep a few extra, because if we do round it, it would look like it's the same as option C, but it is actually cheaper. So I'll write 0.345 per 100 grams. Now we can compare them, and we can see that option B is the cheapest per 100 grams at 33 cents. So B is the answer. Let's go on to number 3. Number 3 says, Chris opens a bank account and deposits $1,000 into it. Interest is paid at 3.5% per annum, compounding annually. Assuming no further deposits or withdrawals are made, what will be the balance in the account at the end of 2 years? So when it says compounding, we know we're dealing with compound interest, possibly an annuity. But an annuity has deposits at regular intervals, whereas normal compound interest will just have one deposit at the beginning. So we're dealing with a normal compound interest situation. Now, the formula for compound interest is on the reference sheet, so let's take a look. This one here is the formula for compound interest. FV equals PV bracket 1 plus R to the n. FV is the future value, which is the value of the investment at the end. That's what we're looking for here. PV is the present value, sometimes just called P, principal. That's how much is being invested. Here the PV is the $1,000. R is the interest rate. We're going to note that that is 3.5% per annum or per year. We need, though, to make sure that this matches the compounding frequency. It is compounding annually, so this matches. N is the length of time, but again, in time periods that match the compounding frequency, in this case annually, we want this to be in years. So since it's 2 years, we don't need to convert anything. So we can put this all into the formula to get FV. Okay, on the calculator, we can enter the percentage as 3.5%, or we can convert that to a decimal, whichever you prefer. I'll enter it as a decimal this time, and then we put the power of 2 on the bracket, and we get $1,071, and that will round to 23 cents. So we can see B is the answer. Okay, let's take a look at question 4. Question 4 says, which compass bearing is the same as a true bearing of 110 degrees? So I'm going to start off by drawing the true bearing 110. True bearings are always from north going clockwise. 110 degrees would be a little past 90. So it would be around here. Now, we want to turn this into a compass bearing. So let's add on the east, west, and south directions. A compass bearing will always be starting with north or south. This one's closer to south, so it starts with south, and then we'll put an angle, and then the direction that's going to from south. This one is going towards the east from south. So it's going to be south, we'll put an angle, and then it's east. But we have to be careful because that angle has to be from south towards the east. That would be this angle over here not the 110 that we have. So to find the angle we want, we can use the fact that north-south is a straight line. That's 180 degrees. So we can do 180 minus 110 and find that that's 70 degrees. So our compass bearing is south, 70 degrees east. That is option C. All right, let's take a look at number 5. Number 5 says, the Coordinated Universal Time, UTC, of Auckland is plus 12 hours, and the UTC of Chicago is minus 5 hours. When the time in Chicago is 2 p.m. Thursday, what is the time in Auckland? So with these kinds of time zone questions, I like to draw a number line to help me work it out. 0 goes in the middle. That would be UTC 0, where London would be. Now we have Auckland at plus 12. Positive numbers are on the right. And time zones go from about minus 12 to plus 12. So I'll put 12 plus 12 over here on the right and put A for Auckland. Minus 5 for Chicago will be on the left, since negative numbers are on the left. I'll put C for Chicago. And we're given that it's 2 p.m. Thursday in Chicago. Now on the number line, we can see that to go from Chicago time to Auckland time, we have to go to the right, which is going to be a plus, by 17 hours, since it will be 5 to get to 0 and then 12 to get to 12. That's 17. So to convert, we just need to add 17 hours. Now, when I have to add a really large number of hours like this, sometimes I'll break it up by first adding 12 and then adding the rest. So we could add 12 and then we'll add 5 to add the total of 17. And that makes it easier because 2 p.m. add 12 hours, it'll now be 2 a.m. the next day. 2 a.m. Friday. And then we just add the 5 hours. That brings us to 7 a.m. on Friday. So the answer is D. All right, let's go on to number 6. Number 6 says, Mary is 18 years old and has just purchased comprehensive motor vehicle insurance. The following excesses apply to claims for at-fault motor vehicle accidents. We have basic excess of $850 for each claim. We have an additional age excess of $1,600 for drivers under 25 years of age. And we have an additional age excess of $400 for drivers 25 years of age or over with no more than 2 years driving experience. How much would Mary be required to pay as excess if she made a claim as a driver at fault in a car accident? So really we just need to work out which of these apply to her. We can pick up right away that an additional age excess of $1,600 applies to her since she's under 25 years of age. Remember the question says that she's 18 years old. So we're going to apply that, but that is an additional excess, which is going to be in addition to the basic excess of $850. The last one doesn't apply to her because she's not 25 years of age or over. So her excess will be the $850 plus the $1,600. So C is the answer. Okay, question 7. Question 7 says, Julia earns $28 per hour. Her hourly pay rate increases by 2%. How much will she earn for a 4-hour shift with this increase? So, the fastest and easiest way to increase something by a given percent is to multiply it by 100 and the percent increase. So 102%. So on the calculator, we'll do 28 times 102%, which we could enter as a decimal, 1.02, and get $28.56. Another way to do that would be to find 2% of $28 and add it on. So if we did that, I could do 28 times 2%, which would be 0.02 as a decimal. We would get the 56 cents, and we'd add that onto the 28 and get the $28.56. Now, she's going to do a 4-hour shift, so all we have to do now is times that by 4. And we get $114.24. So the answer is D. Okay, question 8. Question 8 says, a person's weight is measured as 79.3 kilograms. What is the absolute error of this measurement? So the reference sheet has a bit about absolute error, so let's take a look. Here it says the absolute error is 1/2 times the precision. So the precision is the smallest unit able to be measured, and if we can't see the measuring tool, we will assume it's the last place value in the measurement. So in this measurement, the last place value is the 10th place, the first decimal place. So the precision is 0.1 kilograms. That means that the absolute error is 1/2 times the precision, 0.1. You can do this on the calculator, unless you already know what the answer is. We get 0.05. That's in kilograms. That's not one of the options because it's been converted to grams. So we do have to convert this. Since there are 1,000 grams in a kilogram, we can times by 1,000. And we'll get that that is 50 grams. So the answer is B. Okay, number 9 is next. It says, what is the interest earned in dollars if $800 is invested for X months at a simple interest rate of 3% per annum? So it's a simple interest question. The formula for that is not on the reference sheet, so you do need to know that simple interest, I, is equal to P times R times N. I is the interest, P is the principal, which is the amount invested, R is the interest rate, and N is the time period. Now we do have to be very careful that the R and N match in time units, and that's the tricky part of this question, is they want us to use X in months, but our interest rate is per annum. The easiest way to deal with this is to convert your interest rate into a per month interest rate, and then we can use X in months. So if it's 3% per year, we want to know how much that would be per month. We can use the fact that there's 12 months in a year and take the 3 divided by 12 to get 0.25. So the monthly interest rate is 0.25%, which you may also write as 1/4% or as a decimal, 0.0025. So I will be the P, 800, times R, 0.25%, times N, which they want us to use X in months. And now we just need to simplify that expression. We can multiply together the number parts. 800 times 0.25 percent is 2. So that becomes 2 times x, or just 2x if you like. And so the answer is A. Okay, question 10. Question 10 says, a school collected data related to the reasons given by students for arriving late. The Pareto chart shows the data collected. What percentage of students gave the reason train or bus delay? So we're looking at this part here, and we're looking for the percentage. Now on the right, we do have the percentage, but be careful because this is the cumulative percentage. It includes everything before and including the train or bus delay reason. So the cumulative percentage here, if we trace this across, we can see that that is 92%, since that's 1 tick above the 90, and we can see that there's 5 ticks from 90 to 100. Each is worth 2%. Again, this includes the reasons before it, so the answer is not 92%. We need to find the difference between the previous answer and this answer to get what percentage actually said train or bus delay. The previous answer was 86%. That ends up being 3 ticks above the 80 or 2 ticks below the 90. And so the difference there is our answer. So we get 6%, which is A. All right, question 11. Okay, question 11 says, which of the following correctly expresses y as the subject of the formula 3x minus 4y minus 1 equals 0? So to change the subject of the formula, we need to solve for the prenumeral, which is y. Now, we can see the coefficient of y is negative, and the other side of the equation equals 0. So we can save ourselves a lot of work and trouble by plussing the y term to the other side. That'll make it positive, and y will almost already be on its own. Now, if you prefer, we can swap sides here and write the 4y on the left and 3x minus 1 on the right. But all we have to do now is divide by the 4. Make sure you divide the entire right-hand side by 4. So we get y equals 3x minus 1 over 4. And we can see that the answer is C. All right, question 12 says, an owl is 7 meters above ground level in a tree. The owl sees a mouse on the ground at an angle of depression of 32 degrees. How far must the owl fly in a straight line to catch the mouse, assuming the mouse does not move? So we see angle of depression, which means we're going to be doing some trigonometry. Drawing a diagram will always be very helpful for working these kinds of questions out. So the owl is 7 meters above the ground, and he sees a mouse at an angle of depression of 32 degrees. Whenever you draw an angle of elevation or depression, it has to be relative to the horizontal. Usually with elevation, you can use the ground as the horizontal, but with depression, we might not have something yet. So draw a horizontal line as a reference, and the angle of depression is from this horizontal line pointing down 32 degrees. Okay, now we're just going to complete the right triangle by drawing the ground, and we have a right angle between the tree and the ground. So we have a right triangle, and we have this side on this 7, And we're looking for how far the owl has to fly in a straight line to catch the mouse. So we're actually looking to find the length of this side, which I'll label with an X, and that's the hypotenuse. Now all we're missing is an angle that's actually inside this triangle. And one of the quickest ways to get an angle into the triangle is to use parallel lines. The horizontal line I drew along the top and the horizontal line for the ground are parallel, and we have alternate angles which are equal. So if the angle of depression is 32 degrees, then the angle down here on the ground is also 32 degrees. Now we're ready to do trigonometry. So we need to know, are we using sine, cosine, or tangent, and that depends on which sides we have to work with. 7 is the opposite. X is the hypotenuse. So we'll be using sine. If you don't have your trig ratios memorized, the reference sheet does have them, or maybe you'll remember it using SOHCAHTOA. So we can see that sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So we can use that to solve this problem. We have sine of the angle, 32 degrees, equals the opposite, which is 7, over the hypotenuse, which I called x. Now we just need to solve for x. This is the situation where we would swap the sine and the x, because we would multiply x to the left, but also then divide the sine to the right, and they will swap places. So we get x is 7 over, or divided by, sine 32 degrees, which I'll work out on the calculator. We get approximately 13.2. So our answer is D. Okay, let's take a look at question 13. It says the graphs show the future values over time of P dollars invested at 3 different rates of compound interest. Which of the following correctly identifies each graph? So we have some different options here that we'll need to consider. When we look at the graphs, W and X are both a lot steeper than Y, and W is just a little bit steeper than X. So looking at option A, it says that W is 5% compounding annually and X is 10% compounding annually. That doesn't make sense if W is steeper than X. W would not have a lower interest rate for the same compounding frequency. So A is definitely not correct. Option B has W as 5% per annum compounding annually and X as 10% per annum compounding quarterly. So in this option, X is both having a higher interest rate and a more frequent compounding period, so it would definitely not be lower than W. So B is also not correct. Let's take a look at option C. C gives us W, 10% per annum compounding quarterly, and X as 10% per annum compounding annually. That would make a lot of sense to what we see on W and X because they have the same interest rate, and when one of them compounds more frequently, it will grow more quickly, but it's not a huge difference. So that could explain the W and X. C also gives us Y as 5% compounding annually, and that would make sense as well, since having a lower interest rate is having a larger effect on Y not growing as quickly as the other two. So C seems like a good option, but we could double check D. D has W as 10% compounding annually and X 10% compounding quarterly. That wouldn't be right since, again, a more frequent compounding period that X would be quarterly, it would be higher and growing more quickly than W. So D is not correct, confirming that C is the answer. Okay, let's go to question 14. Question 14 says, last Saturday, Luke had 165 followers on social media. Reese has 537. On average, Luke gains another 3 followers per day, and Reese loses 2 followers per day. If X represents the number of days since last Saturday, and Y represents the number of followers, which pair of equations model this situation? So we can see that we're going to develop linear equations to represent the number of followers given the number of days passed. So let's start working out what Luke's equation would be. We're going to write y equals, because y is the number of followers, and Luke starts off with 165. He then gains 3 followers per day. So we would be adding 3, and then adding 3, and then adding 3. We're going to be adding 3 for every day that passes. And if X is the number of days that's passed, we'll be adding 3 times X to his followers. Now Reese starts off with 537. He then loses 2, and then loses 2 the next day, and then loses 2 more. So he's going to lose 2 for every day that passes. So he will lose 2 times X, the number of days passed. And then we can see that our answer matches B. So B is the answer. Okay, last question on the multiple choice is 15. Now the shading didn't quite show up, so I've shaded the options just as they were on the test. So question 15 says, the scores on an examination are normally distributed with a mean of 70 and a standard deviation of 6. Michael received a score on the examination between the lower quartile and upper quartile of the scores. Which shaded region most accurately represents where Michael's score lies? Okay, so where would the upper and lower quartile of the scores lie? Let's remember how we find the upper and lower quartile. We do that by taking our data and finding the median, which splits our scores in half. We then split these halves in half to get quarters. We'll find Q1 and Q3. So each of these blocks is a quarter of the scores, which means that between Q1 and Q3, we have 50% or half of our scores. So we're looking for which option has 50% shaded around the middle, which would be the median, but with symmetric data like a normal distribution, the median and the mean are both the same. So now we can look at a reference sheet to remember what percentage lies between each of the z-scores, which a z-score is just a number of standard deviations. Now remember that in this question, the standard deviation is 6. So when it says 68% of scores have z-scores between -1 and 1, that means that with 70 being the mean, that +1 standard deviation would be 76, and -1 standard deviation would be 64. And again, 68% of scores would lie between those two values. And we're looking for something smaller than that, 50% of scores. The only option here that has an area shaded around the median or mean that's smaller than 68% is option A. So A is our answer to question 15. And that does it for the multiple choice section. In the next video, we'll pick up on question 16, which is the beginning of the non-multiple choice section.